Hey everybody, Tony D with a hot take on mayors in the United States and how much they suck, apparently. At least the Democratic ones seem to. Um, they're, it's just a towering power of democracy in these cities. No, not democracy, hypocrisy. That's the word I wanted. God. Um, so let's start with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. He's being sued by 8 city residents for, quote, bringing the city to the point of crisis amid soaring crime rate after he advocated defunding the police in the wake of the George Floyd's murder. And actually, just recently, he acknowledged that the current budget will cut 100 cops from Minneapolis. Imagine wanting to cut the cops when half your city burned down. Imagine if you went back in time to the riots during the early 60s, I guess it was the late 60s with JFK. Or imagine being in the Rodney King riots in LA and then coming out of that and going, you know what, we need less police. Less police is definitely not the answer. And you certainly don't do it this way. You certainly don't do it in a reactionary, emotional way. I would legalize drugs. I would legalize prostitution, and I would make it so the cops would actually focus on actual crime and not focus on a million other things that they don't need to be involved with. Part of the problem is the cops get called for everything, and people aren't properly trained to understand how to use the cops. They literally use the cops for almost everything. They feel entitled to use them. They feel entitled to say, "Ooh, bring the cops over." And that's partly because people don't take care of their own business anymore. It used to be you could go to your neighbor and say, "Hey, dude, turn down your music or move your car or whatever." And you could usually work things out with your neighbors. Most people work things out with their neighbors. These days, you don't have a lot of neighborly people. There's a lot of weirdos, a lot of messed up, dysfunctional people, and you need a little latitude to be able to go to your neighbor and say, "Hey, you gotta change things." When they become one of these weird litigious people, then yeah, I guess you got to involve the cops. But you don't want to just do that right out the gate. Then you're the weirdo if you do that. But cutting the police department is just not the answer, especially in Minneapolis, where crime is just out of control. And let's look at what's happening at Seattle. Mayor Durkin vetoes. She actually vetoed a council's 2020 budget revision that would have cut up to 100 police officers. Somebody finally got the message. Didn't you, Jenny? Didn't you? Jenny got the message that these people in Antifa aren't her friends, and that the summer of love was just a bunch of BS she tried to sell in order to slam Trump. Stay in your lane, Mayor. You're ruling Seattle, not the United States. Don't even think about running for president. You're just way out of your league. Fix your own backyard and start by putting the hammer down on these rioters. They're not protesters, they're rioters. I shouldn't put the rioters in quote. Protesters is in quote. Rioters is what they are. People should and can protest peacefully. They're not peaceful. Lock them up. Throw them in jail. When they're thrown in jail locally, it's not a big deal. You go to jail, you get a court summons, maybe you get a fine if you were out of control. That's it. You're just inconvenience. That's what protesters do. That's what happens at a real protest. If you're nice and peaceful, you go with the cops. They process you. Maybe if you're really unfortunate, you spend the night in jail and it's really uncomfortable. But odds are you're going to be let out, the court summons, and you're on your way. So this idea that you're going to let you've let it metastasize. And now you've got a real problem on your hands with people destroying your city and people leaving your city. Stop. And this is the first step. But you got to go further. Unfortunately, if you had done this in the beginning, wouldn't have been any big deal. If you had nipped this in the bud right at the beginning, you would have been fine. Now, you got to do more. It's a good first step, though. In Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti ordered the power cut to a swanky Hollywood Hills residence that police say held parties in violation of public health orders aimed at slowing the spread of the beer virus, and is the home of several TikTok stars, including Bryce Hall. Now, as much as I am not in favor of TikTok stars or these two guys who look like douchebags to me, I would say that cutting the power to their house is incredibly illegal. You absolutely do not have the right to do that. If you want the right, you have to pass a law. You didn't pass a law. This is yet another abuse of your power, Garcetti. Garcetti should not be doing this. This is a total overreach. What next? You're going to start cutting the power to... Oops, we cut the power to the Republican headquarters for Trump. Oh, they were in violation of some city ordinances and they weren't complying. But, it was a mistake to cut their power. But we'll get it on in a few days. Yeah, that's what it turns into. It starts with this. It starts with turning off the power to some guy's house that no one really likes, except I don't know. I guess a lot of people on TikTok like him. But it ends with you shutting off the power to, I don't know, random people who are violating the law in some major or minor way. You don't have the power to do that. That should not be in the power of any mayor. And it's complete abuse of your power. Now, if you want to go in there and bust up the party, and you have the right to do that because there's a complaint, I imagine you couldn't do that, and that's why you resorted to this. So stop doing this. And Angelenos, stand up for yourselves. What the hell are you doing here? Oh, yeah, you're ready to march in the streets for Trump every 10 seconds, but your own mayor shuts off the power of somebody's house? It could be you next. Yeah. Oh, you don't think it's going to happen because you're rich and famous, but you have parties, don't you? And then the other side of the coast, you've got Bill de Blasio, of course, who I did a video on yesterday, who spends $2 million a year on a staff for his wife on the city's dime. This is an editorial, but it's a good one in the New York Post. It's just ridiculous. He defended his corruption. He said, the work is about the needs of the people of this city, especially in this crisis, de Blasio said this week, pointing to his wife running his racial equality task force. I'm sure that's very effective. As well as, this is an editorial, it says, he's so shameless. The universally criticized Thrive NYC mental health debacle. Yet many staffers plainly aren't doing crisis work. One is a $70,000 a year videographer paid via the health department who recorded the First Lady baking cookies during the pandemic. Another is a $143,000 a year PR director whose job by definition is to boost her image, not to serve the public. Same for her $65,000 associate director of advance. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable that New York elected this guy, and that he is still in office despite this, to me, very obvious use of taxpayer money in a corrupt way. I mean, this is corruption on its face. So, Portland mayor's may be getting the message. He denounced the violence of that guy who they just caught, by the way. The guy who beat the guy in the pickup who was defending a trans woman. He was finally caught by the cops. He's facing a lot of charges. A lot of people are very pessimistic about it, think he may get let loose. I think that would be an incredibly bad idea. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen because you have Wheeler and his DA are denouncing it. I think that was a step too far, and now they're going to start throwing people under the bus. So I told you, Antifa, you're going to jail. It may have taken a while for these guys to get on board, but they're starting to get on board. And yeah, I mean, how are you going to defend this? You can't defend this. This guy is violent. He attacked a guy for helping a trans woman. Are you nuts? Oh, the marginalized people. We're all for the marginalized people. Right, BLM. Sure you are. Sure you are. And finally, this is just a level of hypocrisy. It's just off the charts. Lori Lightfoot, mayor of Chicago, the queen of hypocrisy. The woman who fights for gun control laws. Chicago's has some of the most stringent gun control laws in the country. A woman who has allowed her city to riot and loot and people to loot. She has banned protesters from the block where she lives, citing her right to safety. See, Mayor Lightfoot has a right to safety. Apparently, nobody else does. The Democratic mayor said her family requires heightened security due to threats she receives, but did not elaborate. Quote, I think the residents of the city, understanding the nature of the threats that we are receiving on a daily basis, understand I have the right to make sure my home is secure. I guess no one else does. You can't get a gun, and you just let people riot all the time. This is the same woman who got a haircut during the virus, by the way. Remember that? When she told everybody else they'd be fined if you went out and got a haircut. Oh, but see, I need to look good. Rules for thee, but not for me. These are tyrants. Yeah, they're all tyrants. Even Durkin and Wheeler. I mean, Durkin and Wheeler kind of backed off some stuff, but they're all acting like tyrants. They think they rule the city with an iron fist. You have to put your foot down, citizens. Look, you may even agree with some of their policies, and unfortunately, a lot of you idiots do. And I think you're an idiot to agree with their policies, but you're even more of an idiot if you let these people put these policies in place in this way. Because the wheel turns, and when a Republican gets in, the Republican will look at the Democrats and say, well, they set a precedent. I can unilaterally decide to close this thing down. Oh, Planned Parenthood. I'm going to close that down. I've decided it's a non-essential business and a danger to the community. And since that was a precedent set by my predecessor, goodbye, Planned Parenthood. Oh, I'm sorry. Did progressives just suddenly go, whoa, wait a minute. No, we didn't want that. Well, that's the rule of law. That's the precedent you set by the previous administration. It was okay for them. Now you have to sue the city in order to get Planned Parenthood back. Now you have to sue the city in order to get back, your drag queen houses, let's say. Let's say they shut those down. Whatever progressive thing you think is safe, it's not going to be safe because you unraveled the rule of law, because you allowed your Democratic mayors to do it. The Republican mayors will come in and do the same exact thing, only they'll do it to you, dummies. You. So get these people out of office. Throw them in jail. Lori Lightfoot should be out of office. Out of office. And she should just be thrown out. Thrown out immediately. Recall her. Whatever the process is in Chicago, do it now. I mean, this is hypocrisy at level 100 right here. That she is going to put cops on her block to protect her house while the city burns? Why the city gets looted? Why you don't get any protection? What are you, nuts? You better wake up, Chicago. Wake the F up.